Ever wondered about what the staples of the rich and powerful were back in the 70s? Sure, these foods might have been out of reach of the common man, but they were still as much a part of culinary history as your favorite homemade dishes. So, strap in, because today we'll be taking a look at what rich people are back in the 70s.
When it comes to extravagant, expensive, special occasion recipe ideas, this one is one of my favorites.
1. Lobster thermidor. Amidst all the many different stories that exist concerning the origins of our first dish, one thing that's certain are the deep ties it shares with France. And it makes sense, since a lot of the stuff modern culture associated with wealth comes from France. Lobster has always stood its own as a succulent and popular seafood dish. But with lobster thermidor, it entered restaurant menus on a very different level. Imagine for a moment a meal that has diced cuts of lobster meat stuffed into a lobster shell, topped with a buttery wine sauce, sprinkled with cheese, and broiled until brown. The creamy, nutty sweetness you're imagining? Yep, that's lobster thermidor. There's two main reasons why this dish has always been so expensive. First of all, even in the 70s, lobsters have always been difficult to source for. And secondly, it takes quite a while to make this meal from preparation to cooking, till it's finally served. Even simpler homemade recipes take about 40 minutes. But a single bite of this culinary heaven, and you'd be convinced that all the money and time that went into bringing it to your plate was certainly worth it. If you're wondering about which other dish came close to matching that hype, then maybe you should take a look at this next dish.
Filet mignon with a fig and marsala sauce. Delicious.
2. Filet mignon. Time to talk about a dish called filet mignon, a word that translates from French to mean a boneless cut of pork. Though that's how it was traditionally made, in American circles, filet mignon were meat gotten from a cow's tenderloins, a muscle that runs along the spine of the cow. What's so special about these tenderloins, however, is the fact that since they're hardly ever exercised, they are often the most tender and lean parts of the animal, so they're extremely rare to come across. And you just know that anything that's rare is definitely going to be expensive. But like most expensive things, the satisfaction gotten from a bite of this dish is otherworldly, and many people, after feeling the meat practically melting in their mouths, were definitely ready to ask for more. While this meat might not be flavorful as some other cuts like ribeye or sirloin due to its lower fat content, its subtle taste pairs well with rich sauces and seasonings. Back then, it was a meal associated with fancy restaurants and extravagant prices, but today it's available in certain steakhouses for about $20. Not exactly a comfort meal, but not too out of reach either. Can't say the same for this next delicacy though, as it was purely a treat for deep pockets.
We take a Bandera Texas quail, we stuff it with our house-made andouille sausage, serve it with a Trinity ragu and a brown roux sauce.
3. Stuffed quail. Let's hold on a bit on all the red meat and fish, and talk about something related to poultry. A fine midpoint between comfort food and gourmet dining, this dish was meticulously prepared to give rich people a taste of the good life they'd worked so hard for. Stuffed quail is a classic dish that showcases the delicate flavor and tenderness of quail, often complemented by a flavorful stuffing. Here's a detailed look at this elegant dish. Quail is a small game bird known for its rich flavor and tender meat. Stuffing quail involves filling the bird with a savory mixture of ingredients before roasting or cooking it. The stuffing can vary widely, depending on regional traditions and personal preferences. Because quail are often considered as specialty birds, they are often raised in smaller quantities, which raises their cost in relation to other regular poultry. Again, every quail has to be handled individually during the stuffing process, and only the best ingredients are used in the making of this meal. Additionally, its status as a gourmet dish and the need for careful handling and transport contribute to its high price. Overall, these factors make stuffed quail a luxurious and costly option. Talk about expensive. The only thing that surpassed this next dish's amazing taste was its insane price.
The pheasant is super tender. It has these gorgeous reduction sauce. So let's get started.
4. Pheasant Underglass. Pheasant Underglass is a poultry dish generally consisting of the breast of pheasant seasoned with shallots in a wine sauce that's been simmered or boiled to increase its flavor through a process called reduction. While the dish has waned in popularity over many decades, it remains a cultural icon for many in westernized countries. Now, one spectacular thing about this dish was that it was traditionally served on a plate covered with a glass dome, hence the phrase underglass in its name. So there was lots and lots of anticipation as the dome would be lifted, since the aromas of the pheasant would be escaping all at once, filling you with anticipation for the culinary adventure you were about to dive into. There's clearly a lot of intricate processes that go into the making of this dish, and that's why it would be wrong to argue when people call this dish haute cuisine. Also known as high cooking, haute cuisine is a style of cooking characterized by meticulous preparation, elaborate presentation, and the use of high-quality ingredients. And in most 20th century literature, this dish was used as a symbol of wealth or upstanding financial status. Next up on the list is a fixture of haute cuisine at its most classic.
Why do you actually make a consommé? Well, because it looks cool, it looks beautiful, and it's one of those classic techniques that chefs and diners love.
5. Consome. We've highlighted quite a few French dishes already, and this next one is another meal on a long list of luxury French cuisine. Consommé simply means completed, or concentrated in French. It is a type of clear soup made from richly flavored stock or broth that has been clarified. Now, clarified here could take any different forms, but all methods of the clarification involve the use of egg whites. The idea is that the egg whites form a raft of solids at the surface of the stock or broth. These solids, fat, and sediments are then skimmed off, and the broth or stock strained, leaving a strong, rich, flavorful soup. Consommé can be served on its own as a soup or used as gelatin when it has cooled, and while it is sometimes confused with broth and stock, there are clear differences between the three dishes. Yes, it could be said that this dish does come from stock and broth, but consommé is a clear liquid, while broth and stock are often opaque. Also, due to the high amount of gelatin contained in consommé, it feels much richer and weightier than broth, which is usually thinner. Apologies to the vegetarians, though, they won't be able to enjoy this meal as such due to the animal products in it. There is a vegan option, though, that replaces the standard chicken with tomatoes. That should do. Either that, or they could try out our next treat for a change.
Today we're talking cheese, but not just any Swiss cheese. This is raclette.
6. Raclette. If our last meal was a bit exclusive, then here's something that everyone can enjoy. And finally, something that's not from France. Well, actually it is. A bit. You see, the word raclette comes from the French word racler, which means to scrape. But this dish has its real origins in Rhone Valley, Switzerland. Raclette is a dish of Swedish origin and is often a highlight of the Christmas or holiday period over there. In fact, many Swedes are always looking forward to raclette weather. It's a mild, semi-soft Swiss cheese made from raw cow's milk. The cheese is heated, and the melted parts scraped off before being served, typically on or with potatoes. It could also sometimes be served on or with potatoes and pickles, along with some cured meat. While it's usually associated with wealthier members of society, raclette could also be served with bread as street food. Like we said earlier, the main idea behind raclette is scraping of melted cheese, served with very soft potatoes. But it's the additions of greens like pickled onions and cornichons, which are pickled, fermented cucumbers, that really brings everything together. On its own, the cheese has a very smooth, melt-in-your-mouth texture when eaten, and the flavor only intensifies when added to the potatoes. Everything about this meal just screams, or should we say whispers, the ease and softness that comes with having deep pockets. Raclette was the peak of what food for the wealthy was in the 70s, in many ways like this next dish.
Fish cooked in butter with its own dressing made from capers, parsley, and lemon.
7. Sole meunière. Yes, you guessed it. Like many others on the list, this dish is from France and has whitefish as its main protagonist. In fact, many claim that this next fishy treat was the favorite dish of King Louie XIV and that it might have even existed much earlier. Sole meunière, or sole à la meunière, is a classic French dish made of sole that's been floured and fried and served with hot melted butter, lemon juice, and parsley. The word meunière means miller and recalls the flour used to coat the sole before frying. While many recipes specify Dover sole, this dish can actually be made with any other similar flatfish like megrim and lemon sole. Generally made by dredging sole fillets in flour, then pan-frying them in butter, sole meunière really elevates the subtle flavor that flatfish normally has. The result? A crispy, golden exterior with a tender, flaky interior that will have even the most prudent of spenders asking for more. It's a shame a masterpiece like this has gone out of style, because one thing you could say for certain was that it was more than its money's worth.
My salmon en croûte with roasted potatoes, and I did a lemon butter sauce. Absolutely fantastic.
8. Salmon en croûte. There's just so much elegant French food in expensive restaurant menus, and salmon en croûte is an example. But before we continue any further, let's do a quick breakdown of the meaning of this meal. The word en croûte translates to mean in a crust. En croûte dishes are made by wrapping a filling such as steak, salmon, chicken, etc. in puff pastry and sealing it well to make for a moistly cooked filling encased in crisp golden pastry. As early as the 17th century, the idea of wrapping meat or fish in pastry has been popular in France, and with the arrival of French gourmet cuisine into America, this dish began to become more widely known and appreciated among the American upper class. The sophisticated presentation and delicious flavor profile of salmon en croûte made it a popular choice in gourmet and fine dining contexts. For those who aren't as well-to-do, this dish is often served for special occasions or fancy dinners because, despite its hefty price tag, it looks elegantly impressive and tastes even better, so it's worth the bargain eventually. If you're wondering what makes this dish so special, it's the combination of tender fish and puff pastry that's usually rounded off with a creamy sauce. The result is a delightful contrast of textures that kept upper-class people spending in high-end restaurants. Even people who weren't so well-to-do were ready to spend those extra dollars for a taste of salmon en croûte, perfect for special occasions or sophisticated weeknight dinners. The next French delicacy was just about as friendly to your wallets.
These lowly creatures of the countryside when you're out walking, and you might well be blind to the fact that some people think they're an essential part of high living.
9. Escargot. Because of its low calorie and fat content, snail has some advantage over other meats, and that is probably why escargot was so popular among rich people who were looking to eat healthy without starving themselves of the good things of life in the 70s. Even though snails were once thought to be poverty food, they were a quick hit among rich people because of the nutritional value that's contained in every bite. It's quite an adventurous choice for a meal when you look at it on surface level, but it was the 70s, and everyone wanted to try something different from the usual. Often served as an appetizer, escargot is a French word that translates to snail in English, and even though they were once thought to be poverty food, the emergence of haute cuisine chefs made snails become a prized meal among richer Americans back in the day. Edible land snails were prepared with a garlic and parsley butter sauce, along with some white wine to complement their subtle, earthy taste. To prepare escargot, the snails are first cleaned and then cooked, often in their shells. They're typically seasoned with garlic, butter, and herbs, then baked until the butter is bubbling and the snails are tender. They can also be served without their shells in a small dish with the same garlic butter sauce. While eating escargot could be too much of an adventure for some, others find the taste to be quite delightful. And since it's not the 70s anymore, it's definitely cheaper to try escargot. Here's a hint though. If you're a first-timer, you might want to start at a reputable restaurant or French bistro, so you don't have a nasty first experience. It'd be pretty hard to have that with our next treat though.
Foie gras with caramelized apples. It's a dish that's perfectly fit for Christmas. Very unctuous, a bit luxurious. It counteracts the fat in the foie gras.
10. Foie gras. French for fat liver. The prized rich flavor and silky texture of foie gras is gotten from the liver of ducks or geese that have been fattened by force feeding. While that might pose a few problems for those concerned about animal welfare, a bite of this meal will make anyone forget all of their inhibitions. Unlike ordinary duck or geese liver, foie gras has a rich, buttery, and delicate flavor. And my, doesn't that just sound like something for someone with deep pockets? Even though it used to be viewed as a gourmet luxury dish and is still eaten at festive periods, newer, cheaper variations of this delicacy are starting to spring up. There's a vegan option for those who can't get past their ethical concerns, and a less expensive duck foie gras for people with smaller paychecks. The only difference? It's musky, with a slight bitterness, nowhere near the smoother, more delicate flavor of original geese foie gras. If you're a connoisseur of the best flavors money could buy, with a bank account to match, it doesn't get better than this next dish.
There you have it, a classic San Francisco crab Louie salad in a gem lettuce cup.
11. Crab Louie. In the opulent dining rooms of the 1970s, crab Louie reigned supreme as a favorite among the well-heeled set. This refreshing salad, born in San Francisco's early 20th century culinary scene, had by then become a symbol of West Coast luxury. Picture the scene. A waiter would present a bed of crisp iceberg lettuce, artfully arranged with juicy tomatoes, cucumber slices, and perfectly halved hard-boiled eggs. But the piece de resistance was the generous mound of sweet, tender crab meat crowning the creation, glistening under the restaurant's soft lighting. The signature Louie dressing, a refined cousin of Thousand Island with a bold kick of chili sauce and a whisper of Worcestershire, would be drizzled over the top with a flourish. For the elite of the 70s, recreating this dish at home became a mark of culinary prowess. They'd source the finest Dungeness crab, although other varieties were acceptable in a pinch. The dressing was a closely guarded secret, with hostesses vying to perfect their own versions. Served chilled, crab Louie was the ideal light lunch for ladies who lunched, or a refreshing dinner option on balmy summer evenings. To recreate this classic at home, you'll need cooked crab meat, traditionally Dungeness, but any variety works: lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers, hard-boiled eggs, and optionally asparagus spears for added flair. The dressing combines mayonnaise, chili sauce, and a few key ingredients. While it was once a fixture at high-end luncheons and country clubs, crab Louie is equally at home on your dinner table. It evokes the feeling of dining oceanside, regardless of your actual location. This retro classic offers a delightful combination of textures and flavors that continue to appeal to modern palates, making it a worthwhile addition to your culinary repertoire in much the same way as our next entry is.
Trout in almonds. If I had a little bistro, this could easily become my signature dish.
12 Trout Almondine. This dish was born out of an effort of the rich to emulate the refined tastes of European aristocracy. But in no time, Trout Almondine became a staple in high-end American restaurants. This French-inspired dish perfectly captured the era's penchant for continental dining, offering a delicate balance of flavors that appealed to sophisticated palates. Imagine being in a dimly lit, wood-paneled dining room filled with the gentle clink of crystal and the murmur of important conversations. The maitre d' would present the Trout Almondine with a flourish, its aroma wafting enticingly across the table. The delicate, flaky trout filet, lightly dusted with flour and pan-fried to golden perfection, would be the centerpiece. But the true magic lay in the topping, a sauce of browned butter and toasted almonds that elevated the dish from mere fish to a gastronomic experience. The contrast between the tender fish and the nutty crunch of the almonds created a texture that delighted diners. For rich folks in the 70s, serving Trout Almondine was a point of pride. Cooks would source the freshest trout, lovingly prepare the almond sauce, and present it with a wedge of lemon and a sprinkling of fresh parsley. The dish became a favorite for dinner parties, allowing hosts to showcase their culinary sophistication. To prepare Trout Almondine at home, you'll need trout fillets, sliced almonds, butter, lemon, and parsley. The process involves pan-frying the trout, toasting the almonds, and preparing the butter sauce. While traditionally served as an upscale dinner option, its relatively straightforward preparation makes it accessible for home cooks looking to add a touch of sophistication to their meals, just like the next meal we have for you is something you can make yourself.
Are built into the bouillabaisse before the spicy herbal soup in which they were cooked is ladled on.
13 Bouillabaisse. In the lavish world of 1970s fine dining, bouillabaisse held a special place as a dish that combined luxury with a touch of rustic charm. This French fish stew, hailing from Provence, had found its way onto the menus of America's most exclusive restaurants, riding the wave of French cuisine's popularity among the elite. It would only be found within a bustling kitchen in a high-end establishment, where chefs meticulously prepared this complex dish for diners with a refined taste. The rich would gather around tables draped in fine linen, eagerly anticipating the arrival of their bouillabaisse. The stew, a vibrant medley of various fish and shellfish, would arrive steaming hot, its aroma a tantalizing blend of saffron, fennel, and garlic. Each bowl was a treasure trove of seafood bounty, delicate fish fillets, plump mussels, briny clams, and perhaps even succulent chunks of lobster, all swimming in a fragrant tomato-based broth. The real connoisseurs knew to spread Louie, a garlicky saffron mayonnaise on crusty bread, and dunk it into the broth, adding another layer of flavor to the already complex dish. For wealthy home cooks of the time, recreating bouillabaisse became a culinary challenge. They'd source the freshest seafood, import saffron from Spain, and spend hours perfecting the broth. Serving bouillabaisse at a dinner party was a clear statement of one's worldliness and refined palate, a delicious symbol of the good life. While it may seem daunting to prepare for yourself, bouillabaisse is essentially an elaborate fish soup that brings a taste of the Mediterranean to your table. To make it, sauté onions, garlic, and fennel. Add tomatoes, saffron, and fish stock. Simmer. Add various fish and shellfish in stages based on cooking time. Serve hot with rouille, which is a garlic saffron mayonnaise and crusty bread. Its combination of flavors and textures makes it an excellent choice when entertaining guests, just like the next classic on our list has also proven to be.
Get excited about it because it's happening right now! Chateaubriand!
14 Chateaubriand. Let's go back to the opulent dining rooms of the 1970s, where Chateaubriand reigned supreme as the pinnacle of beef dishes. For the rich and powerful, ordering this French culinary masterpiece was not just about satisfying hunger. It was a statement of wealth, taste, and sophistication. The star of the meal would be a thick, perfectly roasted cut of beef tenderloin, its exterior caramelized to a beautiful brown, its interior a juicy pink. The theatrical carving that followed was as much a part of the experience as the taste itself. Chateaubriand was always served for two, a shared indulgence that fostered an air of intimacy and exclusivity. The beef, known for its melt-in-your-mouth texture and rich flavor, would be accompanied by a velvety béarnaise sauce, its tanginess cutting through the meat's richness. On the side, one might find chateau potatoes, crisp on the outside and fluffy within, and meticulously prepared vegetables. Preparing Chateaubriand at the time was the ultimate challenge. You'd have to source the finest beef tenderloin, often needing to establish personal relationships with high-end butchers to ensure quality. If you're trying to recreate this meal in your home, make sure to season some thick beef tenderloin, sear it in a hot pan, then roast it until it reaches your desired doneness. At that point, let it rest. While it rests, prepare your béarnaise sauce. Slice the meat, serve it with sauce, and a side of chateau potatoes and seasonal vegetables. The dish's popularity among the elite in the 70s was mostly due to its perfect balance of flavors, a feature the next entry on our list also has.
A Tornados Risini, a traditional and pretty delicious recipe.
15 Tornados Risini. Looking back at the decadent world of 1970s fine dining, Tornados Risini stood as a testament to excess and culinary artistry. Named after the famous Italian composer, this dish embodied the opulence that the rich craved in their dining experiences. Picture a luxurious restaurant, its walls adorned with priceless art, where captains of industry and celebrities alike would gather to indulge in this culinary marvel. The dish would arrive, a symphony of luxurious ingredients. A perfectly cooked beef tenderloin perched atop a crispy crouton, crowned with a generous slice of seared foie gras. The crowning glory, a liberal shaving of black truffles, their earthy aroma wafting across the table. The entire creation would be napped with a glossy Madeira demi-glace, its rich flavor tying all the elements together. Each bite was a revelation, a perfect balance of flavors and textures that justified its hefty price tag. The preparation became a point of pride, a way to showcase one's culinary prowess and access to the finest ingredients. To prepare this meal, sear beef tenderloin medallions and top each one with sautéed foie gras and truffle slices. Prepare Madeira sauce in the pan. Place tornadoes on toasted bread rounds, pour sauce over, and then garnish it with more truffle slices. The next meal we have for you that the rich used to eat back when was just as much of a status symbol among affluent dinners as this one. Check it out.
The 1950s and the 1960s and explore Cheris Jubilee. You're gonna love it.
16 Cheris Jubilee. Cheris Jubilee was reliably the dessert of choice for the rich and famous in the midst of the glamorous dining scene of the 1970s. This flamboyant creation, with its roots in late 19th century England, had become a staple in high-end American restaurants, captivating diners with its theatrical presentation. Picture a buzzing dining room in an exclusive establishment, where the arrival of Cheris Jubilee would hush conversations and draw all eyes. The maitre d' would wheel out a gueridon, laden with a copper pan filled with plump, ripe cherries, simmering in a syrupy sauce of cherry liqueur. The real magic happened next. With a flourish, the server would ignite the dish, creating a spectacular show of blue flames that danced across the cherries. As the fire subsided, leaving behind a caramelized, intensely flavored cherry sauce, it would be spooned over scoops of premium vanilla ice cream. To make it, heat up some pitted cherries with sugar and kirsch. Flambe the resulting mix with brandy and serve immediately over vanilla ice cream. The contrast of the warm, boozy cherries against the cold, creamy ice cream was a sensory delight that never failed to impress then, and is sure to blow your mind even now. For the wealthy entertainer of the 70s, mastering Cheris Jubilee was a must. The visual appeal of the blue flames dancing over the cherries, combined with the rich aroma of the caramelized fruit and liqueur, made Cheris Jubilee an unforgettable end to lavish meals in upscale homes and restaurants alike. In that exact same manner, our next meal is a dessert of unimaginable flavors.
And today on Preppy Kitchen, we're making a baked Alaska. So let's get started.
17 Baked Alaska. In the extravagant world of 1970s fine dining, baked Alaska stood out as a dessert that truly embodied the era's love for spectacle and indulgence. This unique creation, defying culinary logic by combining hot and cold elements, was a favorite among the rich and famous who dined in America's most exclusive establishments. The dessert would be wheeled out on a silver cart, its perfectly domed meringue exterior gleaming under the soft lighting. With a flourish, the waiter would set it aflame at tableside, creating a mesmerizing blue glow that reflected in the eyes of awestruck diners. As the flame subsided, the waiter would deftly slice into the dessert, showing tantalizing layers of premium ice cream and sponge cake within the still warm meringue shell. You want to make yours already? Simply prepare an ice cream dome on a sponge cake base and freeze until it's firm. Cover it all with meringue and bake it briefly at high heat to brown the meringue while keeping ice cream frozen. Serve immediately. This juxtaposition of temperatures and textures was as much a revelation to the sophisticated palates of the wealthy then as it will be to your taste now. Much like this, our next meal embodies what culinary extravagance is.
Dates back to the 1870s, is that correct?
This one, yes.
This is a duck press.
This is a duck press.
18 canard à la presse, pressed duck. Canard à la presse, or pressed duck, was the peak of 70s culinary extravagance. This French delicacy, requiring specialized equipment and extraordinary skill, was a favorite among the rich who sought unique gastronomic experiences. Picture a hushed restaurant where the arrival of the duck press, a contraption typically made of iron or bronze, would signal the start of a true culinary spectacle. The partially roasted duck would be presented to admiring diners before being expertly carved tableside. But the real drama unfolded as the remaining carcass was placed in the press. With a turn of the heavy screw, the duck's bones would be slowly crushed, extracting every last drop of flavorful juices. This intensely flavored elixir would then be made into a rich, blood-thickened sauce, often enhanced with cognac and wine, creating a dish of unparalleled depth and complexity. The resulting sauce, poured over the tender duck meat, offered a powerful combination of flavors that both shocked and delighted sophisticated palates. For the wealthy, experiencing canard à la presse was a mark of culinary adventurousness and refined taste. It was a dish that wasn't typically able to be replicated at home by most private chefs due to the specialized equipment required. The rich, complex flavors of this meal created a dish that was more of an experience than a simple taste. Speaking of experiences, our next entry is nothing short of a masterclass in French culinary extravagance.
Coquille Saint-Jacques. This is simply one of the world's most delicious dishes, period.
19 Coquilles Saint-Jacques. Coquille Saint-Jacques holds a special place as a dish that perfectly embodied the 70s love for French cuisine. This elegant scallop preparation was a favorite among the rich and famous, gracing the menus of America's most exclusive restaurants. The dish would typically be presented in a scallop shell-shaped dish, its contents a visual feast of golden brown perfection. Tender sea scallops, sourced from the finest fishmongers, would nestle in a velvety sauce of white wine and cream, studded with sautéed mushrooms. A golden crust of breadcrumbs and Gruyere cheese would crown the dish, adding a tantalizing crunch to each bite. The flavors were a harmonious balance. The sweet brininess of the scallops complemented by the rich, creamy sauce and the nutty cheese topping. To make it, poach your scallops in white wine and prepare some mushroom duxelles and bechamel sauce. Combine the scallops with the sauces in scallop shells. Top it all with breadcrumbs and Gruyere cheese, then broil the mixture until it's golden and bubbly. Remember, the sauce has to be just right. Not too heavy as to overpower the delicate scallops, but rich enough to satisfy a discerning palate, much like our final entry does.
Today I'm going to prepare for you a veal Oscar. This dish is said to be created in honor of King Oscar II.
20 Veal Oscar. In the sumptuous dining scene of the 1970s, veal Oscar stood as a testament to the era's love for luxurious continental cuisine. This opulent dish, named after Sweden's King Oscar II, was a staple in America's finest restaurants, captivating the palates of the rich and famous. This culinary masterpiece had tender veal cutlets, pounded thin and cooked to perfection, to form its base. Atop the veal, succulent crab meat and sometimes lobster would be arranged, its sweet brininess a perfect complement to the mild meat. Crisp spears of asparagus to symbolize the arrival of spring would crown the dish, their vibrant green a visual contrast to the pale veal and white crab meat. The pièce de résistance was the blanket of béarnaise sauce, its buttery flavor tying all the elements together in a harmonious symphony of taste. For the wealthy home entertainer of the 70s, serving veal Oscar was a clear statement of culinary sophistication. Making it requires veal cutlets pounded thin. Sauté the veal until it's golden brown and cooked through. Cook your asparagus for 2 or 3 minutes before setting it aside and making your béarnaise sauce. Serve your veal, top it with crab meat, your cooked asparagus spears, and the béarnaise sauce. Enjoy. With this, we've come to the end of today's video. Everyone, which of these meals eaten by the rich folks of the 1970s caught your eye? Is there any dish you think we've missed? You're welcome to share it with us in the comments. Of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with all your friends. Bye for now.